Churchill announced his single-minded devotion to the British Empire and his views on its place in the scheme of things in his first political speech made to the local Tory Primrose League during their annual fete in the grounds of Kennington Hall in Somerset in 1897. It was Jubilee year, and so he reminded his rural audience of the splendour of their empire and the value of the Royal Navy. Battleships, dominions, and colonies made Britain a great power, and together were the guarantee that our flag shall fly high upon the sea, and that our voice shall be heard in the councils of Europe. Finally, he invoked Britain's mission of bringing peace, civilization, and good government to the uttermost end of the earth. The empire was a responsibility that had to be taken seriously by everyone. In June 1899, Churchill told the electors of Oldham that the consciousness of dominion over subject races must alone increase the self-respect of every Englishman. Be he rich or be he poor, or whatever his fortune may be, noblesse oblige has a meaning to every man of British birth. This assertion was rooted in his father's Tory democracy, which had been a program for national regeneration largely invented by Lord Randolph to make his party attractive to the newly enfranchised working classes. Tory democracy was a blend of social reform. At Oldham, Winston announced his support for old-age pensions, Disraelian one-nation conservatism, and patriotism. It was in the name of Tory democracy that Churchill invited the mill hands and shopkeepers of Oldham to think of themselves as bound by that essentially aristocratic notion of noblesse oblige, by which a landlord had moral obligations to his tenants. Churchill's empire was an accumulation of overseas estates, and it was the duty of every Briton to see that they were well managed and that their inhabitants were well treated. This was why he would later refer to Britain as an imperial democracy. In a wider context, this national responsibility was what Rudyard Kipling called the white man's burden in a poem written in 1900 to prepare Americans for their imperial duties to the people of the recently annexed Philippines. The United States was shouldering part of a global burden. Its weight was unevenly distributed between 9 other imperial nations which possessed colonies in Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. They were Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Russia, Japan, the Netherlands, Spain, and Portugal, and by 1900 their combined empires covered 85% of the world's surface. This partition of the globe had been underway for the past 400 years and had always been accepted as natural, legitimate, and, on the whole, desirable for both rulers and ruled. Churchill's British Empire was a paradigm which set a noble example to the world. It contrasted favorably with the unloved and brutal Spanish administration of Cuba, which he briefly visited in 1895. Afterwards, he remarked that under British rule the island would have evolved into a free and prosperous country with just laws and a Cuban cricket 11 that might have played at Lord's. Moreover, and this would have pleased both Churchill and the voters of Oldham, Cuban cigars would have been exchanged for Lancashire cottonware. The British Empire was the largest empire. In 1900, the red bits on the world map added up to 1.8 million square miles, which were home to 294 million people, nearly 2/3 of whom were Indian. There were over 13 million British colonists, most of whom were first- or second-generation immigrants who had settled in Canada, Newfoundland, Natal, Cape Colony, Australia, and New Zealand. The White Dominions were the British Empire's greatest success story to date.